What if I told you that everything you've been taught about death was never meant to prepare you for it? It was meant to make you fear it. From the moment you first asked what happens after you die, someone handed you a story. Maybe it was a well-meaning parent who said you'd go to heaven if you were good, or a religious teacher who warned you about eternal punishment if you strayed too far. Maybe it was society, quietly pushing the idea that death is the final curtain, the end of the story, the nothingness that swallows everything. These stories were passed down to you like sacred truth. But what if they weren't true at all? What if these beliefs were part of a system designed not to enlighten you, but to keep you in line, to keep you small, to keep you afraid? You see, fear is one of the oldest tools of control. When you fear something deeply, like the unknown, you become easy to manage. You seek safety. You follow the rules. You stay within the boundaries of what others have decided is acceptable. And death, this mysterious, inevitable thing, is perhaps the most powerful fear of all. If someone can control the way you think about death, they can control the way you live. Now ask yourself, when you think about death, what do you feel? Panic? Emptiness? A tightness in your chest? The image of a judging figure sitting on a throne, measuring your worth? The idea that this life is a one-shot game, and if you mess it up, you'll be cast away forever? That feeling you're having right now isn't just yours. It's the result of centuries of conditioning. It's been carved into the human psyche, generation after generation, and it's time to question it, because the truth is, death is not what you've been told. It's not punishment. It's not annihilation. It's not the end. Death is a transition, a doorway, a return. And you? You don't vanish when your heart stops beating. In fact, what begins in that moment is far more vivid, conscious, and deliberate than anything you've known while trapped in a physical body. But if this is true, why don't more people know it? Why does fear still dominate the conversation around death? Why do we whisper about it in hushed tones or pretend it isn't coming? Because powerful systems, religious, political, institutional, have found it far more profitable to keep you in fear than to set you free. Imagine this. If people truly understood that death is not an end but a shift into another form of life, how would they live? Would they be as easy to manipulate? Would they sell their souls for approval? Would they cling to money, titles, or status the way they do now? No, they wouldn't. They would live differently, bravely, authentically, spiritually awake. And that kind of person, the one who no longer fears death, is the hardest kind of person to control. That's why these teachings were hidden. Not destroyed, just buried, suppressed under layers of dogma and doctrine, scrubbed from the pages of sacred texts, labeled heresy or mysticism or insanity. The voices that spoke the truth weren't silenced because they were wrong, they were silenced because they were dangerous. And yet, the truth never dies. It waits. It whispers. It shows up in the near-death experience that defies all scientific explanation, in the dreams that feel more real than waking life, in the stories of those who touched the other side and came back, changed. In the ancient texts that speak of dimensions, spirit guides, soul contracts, things that religion often mocked and science refused to touch. But they were there, they've always been there. Right now, at this very moment, you are standing on the edge of two realities, the one you've been taught to believe, and the one your soul already knows. And the moment you begin to question what you were told about death, everything begins to change. You stop seeing death as something to be feared and start seeing it as something to be understood. You begin to realize that life and death are not opposites, they are partners. They exist on the same spectrum of consciousness. One doesn't erase the other, it completes it. The finality you've been taught to fear is an illusion. You don't end, you expand. You return to a state that is more real than this one, more alive than your body has ever been. Your memories stay with you. Your identity stays with you. Your awareness becomes clearer, not dimmer. The idea of judgment, of being weighed and sentenced, that's another story designed to control. What awaits you isn't a divine courtroom. It's a reunion, a review, a remembering. You're not sent anywhere. You choose. And you're not alone when you cross over. You are met, welcomed, guided, but you don't have to take this on faith. You don't even have to believe it right now. All I ask is that you question what you've been told. Follow the cracks in the narrative. Look for the places where the fear doesn't make sense, where the punishment doesn't align with love, where the God you were taught to fear doesn't match the feeling of divine presence you've experienced in your most sacred moments. Because when you start to question, something happens. A doorway opens inside you. A deeper knowing begins to stir. It's the part of you that's older than your name, your face, your story, the part that remembers who you really are. You've died before. You've crossed this threshold more times than your mind can grasp. And each time, you've returned to grow, to love, to experience. You are not new to this journey. You are ancient. And the fear that surrounds death is not your natural state. It's the fog of forgetting. A fog that is now starting to lift. So why now? Why is this knowledge coming back to the surface? Why are you hearing this today? Because the world is changing. The veil is thinning. More people are awakening to truths that used to be hidden. The fear-based systems are crumbling, and in their place, a new consciousness is emerging. One that remembers that death is not a failure, it's a function. That dying is not falling into darkness, it's stepping into light. And that you, yes, you, have nothing to fear. You are more than this body, more than this lifetime. And when the moment comes that you leave this form behind, you won't be lost. You'll be found, not judged, but embraced. Not erased, but expanded. And the only thing that dies is the illusion. So let go of the fear, let go of the lie, and take the first step into a truth that has waited lifetimes for you to remember. What if everything you believed about the moment of death, that it's instant, final, like a switch being flipped, was entirely wrong? You've been told that when your heart stops, so does your awareness. That consciousness vanishes like steam, gone in a blink. That you cease to exist the moment machines can no longer detect a pulse or brainwave. But what if that's not what happens at all? What if, instead of shutting off, your awareness simply shifts? Gradually, intentionally, and consciously. Seth's teachings dismantle this falsehood with precision. According to him, consciousness doesn't die. It transitions. It doesn't flicker out. It expands. The truth is far more gentle, far more mysterious, and far more beautiful than anything you've been told. When your body begins to die, you don't vanish. You begin to awaken. The process of death isn't abrupt. It unfolds in stages. Like walking out of a dense fog into the clarity of morning light, you begin to remember a deeper version of yourself, one that has never been confined to a physical shell. Seth describes this transition not as a rupture, but a release. Imagine you're holding onto the world with a rope wound tightly in your hands. Death is simply the process of that rope slowly loosening, one finger at a time, until you're finally free to float into a wider space of being. This is why people near the end of life often begin experiencing things that seem strange to observers. They speak to deceased relatives no one else can see. They smile at something just beyond the edge of the bed. They say they're ready to go home, even if they've never left the room. To the untrained eye, these might look like hallucinations. But they're not. These are glimpses, evidence, previews of the next reality that is already forming around them. Consciousness begins withdrawing before the body officially dies. That withdrawal can start hours, days, even weeks before death, depending on the individual. It's not that the person is confused or losing their grip on reality. It's that they're beginning to tune into another one that's always been there, hidden just beyond the veil of perception. This is why the dying often report seeing vibrant landscapes, luminous beings, loved ones who feel more alive than the people standing beside them. They're not imagining, they're beginning to remember. You might wonder why these experiences are so consistent, why people from different cultures, backgrounds, and belief systems all seem to report the same thing: a presence in the room, a light in the corner, a warmth they can't explain. It's because the death process is universal. The form may change, but the essence is the same. The body may appear still, but the soul is stirring. Seth explains this using a concept known as the silver cord, an energetic tether that connects your consciousness to your physical body. You could think of it as a thread of divine light, one that allows you to exist in both realms simultaneously, until the moment you no longer need to. That cord doesn't snap violently, it gently loosens. Like a balloon being released into the sky, consciousness rises as the body rests. This is also why people who have had near-death experiences speak with such clarity. They often say they floated above their bodies, watched the doctors working, heard their loved ones weeping, and what's more, they report feeling calm, unafraid, aware. If death were truly the end, how could awareness persist? The answer is simple. It never stopped. It simply moved. It stepped through a doorway you've been taught to fear, and found itself more awake than ever before. Think about that for a moment. You've been conditioned to believe that death means unconsciousness, but what if it actually means hyperconsciousness? What if it's not the end of perception, but the beginning of deeper perception? Imagine seeing without eyes, hearing without ears, feeling without skin, not limited by nerves or organs, but expanded into a state where awareness is pure, direct, and unfiltered. That's what Seth described, and that's what so many have tasted in moments where life and death seem to overlap. This is also why, in the days or hours before passing, many people begin to withdraw, not just from the physical world, but from emotional attachments as well. They may become quieter, more contemplative. They may begin to speak in metaphors, express a sense of inner peace or cosmic timing. They may say things like, "I'll be leaving soon," as if they're preparing for a trip. That's because, on a deeper level, they are. They're already walking with one foot in this world and the other in the next. And here's the truth. You don't have to be dying to understand this. You can begin to grasp it right now, simply by opening your mind to the possibility that you are more than a body. That you are more than a brain producing thoughts. That you are, and have always been, consciousness first, energy second, form third. This shift in perspective changes everything. When you understand that consciousness is primary, you begin to live differently. You stop fearing death as an enemy. You stop seeing others as temporary forms. You begin to look deeper. You listen closer. You open wider. Because the truth is, death is not something that happens to you. It's something you participate in. Your consciousness, even in the moments before death, remains sovereign. You are not dragged into the afterlife. You rise into it. You are not ripped from the body. You step out of it. You are not destroyed. You are released. So many of the fears surrounding death come from the belief that it's a blackout, a void. But Seth's teaching, and the accounts of thousands who have glimpsed the other side, show something very different. They speak of clarity, of peace, of presence, of stepping into a field of light that feels more real than anything they've ever known. They speak of remembering themselves, not as the name they carried, or the job they held, but as eternal consciousness returning home. And perhaps that's the greatest secret of all, that you've never truly been separate from that home. That even now, within your physical body, there is a part of you already connected to the greater field. The realm beyond, the place we call after death, even though it exists right beside you, humming quietly in the background. So the next time you hear someone say, "They're gone," remember this: they're not gone. They've shifted, they've returned, they've stepped into a wider version of themselves. And one day, you will too, not as an ending, but as a continuation, not as a vanishing, but as a rising. Consciousness does not shut off. It remembers, it expands. And when that moment comes, when your breath softens, your body grows quiet, and the silver cord begins to loosen, you will not disappear. You will awaken, and it will feel like the most natural thing you've ever done. What if I told you that the moment you were born, an invisible thread connected your soul to your body, an unbreakable tether that held you in place until the day you were ready to release it? There is more to you than what you see in the mirror, more than organs, bones, and breath. You are consciousness, pure, radiant, intelligent awareness, temporarily housed within a biological vessel. But that vessel is not the whole of you, it's only a part. A costume you wear for a little while, a temporary instrument through which you can experience physical life. And just like you entered it, one day you will leave it. But the way you leave is not violent or abrupt, as you've been conditioned to believe. It is subtle, it is soft, it is sacred. Seth spoke of something few people have the language for, but many have felt: the silver cord. It is not a myth or poetic metaphor, it is real. An energetic conduit that binds your non-physical essence, your consciousness, to your physical body. It's not made of flesh or matter, it's made of vibration, light. A current of spiritual electricity that allows your soul to remain tethered while it journeys through the density of form. This cord is not easily severed. In fact, most of your life, it is held firmly in place, anchoring you to the body so you can function within the material world. It allows your spirit to express through your physical senses. It lets your eyes see color, your hands feel warmth, your lungs draw breath. But as the end of this incarnation approaches, something beautiful begins to happen. The cord does not snap, it loosens, it does not tear, it gently unwinds. Like a sailboat untethering from the dock, you begin to drift, slowly, peacefully, toward another shore. This process often begins before anyone around you notices. The body may still be moving, speaking, even laughing, but the soul has already begun to stretch beyond its shell. You start to exist in two places at once. There are moments you are fully in your body, aware of the room, the people, the sounds. But then there are moments, perhaps in dreams, perhaps in quiet stillness, where you feel pulled somewhere else. You might see faces that aren't in the room, feel the presence of something vast and loving. You might speak words that don't make logical sense to others, but carry deep meaning within you. These aren't symptoms of confusion, they're signals of expansion. Your awareness begins to operate in dual mode. Part of you is here, part of you is already there. And what is there? It's not a place in the sky or a fiery pit beneath the ground. It's a frequency, a dimension of reality that exists just beyond the edge of physical sight. You begin to tune into it the same way a radio tunes into a new station, not by changing locations, but by adjusting frequency. And the silver cord? It's the line that allows you to flow back and forth while the transition is underway. Those who are approaching death often describe incredible things. They speak of light coming from unseen corners, of conversations with long-departed loved ones, of landscapes so vivid they make the physical world seem dull. Some even report visiting people in dreams before their actual death is known to others. These are not hallucinations, they are legitimate interactions happening within the in-between. They are moments when the silver cord stretches just enough to allow the soul to explore the next reality before fully crossing into it. And yet, through it all, the cord holds. It allows return, it allows reflection. It provides a bridge between dimensions so that the soul is never truly lost during this shift. This is why so many people who have near-death experiences are able to come back with clarity, memory, peace. Because the cord was still intact, it allowed them to witness what lies beyond the veil, while still having the option to return. But eventually, a moment comes when the soul is ready. The body may be frail, the mind may be quiet, and in this stillness, the final detachment begins. It is not a wrenching or ripping, it is an unplugging, like a soft exhale after a long breath, like the letting go of a hand you've been holding for lifetimes. The silver cord releases, and the soul, no longer tethered, rises without resistance. People often ask, how will I know when it's time? The truth is, you'll feel it, not as fear, but as peace. There will be a stillness within you that can't be explained. A sense of everything being in its right place. It may come suddenly, or it may unfold over weeks of preparation. But when it comes, there is no doubt. Because you will feel the shift in your being, you will feel yourself lifting from the density of flesh and merging with something greater, something you've always belonged to. The beauty of this process is that it honors your readiness. You are never forced. You are never pushed. The silver cord only dissolves when your consciousness has completed its agreement with the body. Until then, it remains, it watches, it waits, it protects, and when the time is right, it releases you into a realm that is not foreign, but deeply familiar. And perhaps this is the greatest secret of all. You have known this realm before. The same cord that connects you to your body now has connected you through every incarnation you've ever lived. This isn't your first time tethered to a body, and it won't be the last. You've traveled through dimensions before. You've worn faces, spoken names, loved and lost, and returned again to the light that is your truest home. The silver cord is a witness to that. It has been with you through every descent into matter and every rise into spirit. Some mystics have glimpsed this cord in dreams or out-of-body experiences. It appears as a shimmering filament, radiant and alive. It connects at the crown of the head or the heart center, depending on the individual. It pulses with energy, linking the subtle and the solid, the temporary and the eternal. And even while you are alive, you can become aware of it. In meditation, in sleep, in those moments where you feel expanded beyond the room, it's there, reminding you that you are never only what you seem. You are consciousness in a body, yes, but you are also more. You are multidimensional, eternal, capable of traversing planes and realities. And the silver cord is the gentle thread that guides you between them. So when that time comes, when you feel the veil beginning to thin, when you sense a presence calling you softly from beyond, don't be afraid. Know that it's not a rupture, it's not a fall. It's a release, a liberation, a reunion, and as the silver cord unravels its final strands, you will not lose yourself. You will find yourself, fully, finally, beautifully. Because your soul was never truly bound, it was only visiting. And now, the tether that held you in place is letting go, not to abandon you, but to set you free. What if I told you that dying doesn't feel like disappearing into darkness, but more like waking up from a long, strange dream? All your life, you've been told that death is the end, a blank screen, a void. You've been led to believe that when your body stops functioning, everything that made you who you are dissolves along with it. No more thoughts, no more feelings, no more memory. But that's not what really happens. That's the illusion, the truth. What Seth revealed and what thousands have quietly echoed in near-death accounts is far more profound. Death is not the end of consciousness. It's the moment consciousness becomes fully conscious of itself. Imagine this. You've been in a deep sleep your whole life, walking through what you believed was reality, a world filled with structure, pressure, limitations, and linear time. You believed the body was you, that your thoughts were confined to neurons, that your vision was limited to what your eyes could see, but the moment of death pulls back that curtain. Not harshly, not violently, but gently, effortlessly. It's like opening your eyes after a long night and realizing that the dream you thought was everything was only a small part of something much bigger. People often ask, what does it feel like to die? Is it painful? Is it terrifying? The answer may surprise you. For most, the actual moment of death is one of immense relief. There is no agony in that final release, only peace. In fact, physical pain, no matter how intense it was in life, ends immediately, gone. Not dulled or numbed, but completely gone, because the source of that pain was never your true self. It was the body. Once the connection to that body is fully severed, the suffering attached to it disappears with it. You find yourself suddenly weightless, not just in form, but in emotion. The heaviness of fear, worry, regret, and illness is lifted in an instant. It's as if you've stepped out of a too-tight shell and realized how cramped you had been all along. But more than the absence of pain, it's the presence of awareness that stuns you. You don't fade, you become sharper. You don't forget, you remember. The colors are more vivid, the sounds richer, the sensations deeper than anything you've ever known in physical form. You're still you, but somehow more, expanded, clear. You're not looking through the lens of physical senses anymore. You're seeing directly through the eye of your soul. There's no distortion, no filter, no noise. Just pure awareness. It's not a blank silence, it's a radiant hum, a deep remembering, a calm that feels sacred. In that moment, you realize something unshakable. You didn't go anywhere. You didn't vanish. You simply stepped into a version of reality that was always waiting for you just beneath the surface of this one. You're not floating in some faraway space. You're here, still present, but tuned into a higher frequency. You can still sense the room where your body lies. You can feel the love of the people nearby. You might even try to speak to them, not realizing at first that your voice is no longer tied to vocal cords. But you're not lost. In fact, you've never felt more found. What hits you next is a sense of freedom so profound it moves through every part of your being. You are no longer bound by the physical laws you once believed were permanent. Time doesn't behave the same way. Distance collapses. Thought itself becomes a vehicle. Where your attention goes, you go. There is no need to walk or travel as you once did. Movement happens through intention. Clarity rises without effort. Emotions are felt in full, but without distortion or confusion. Love, especially, becomes overwhelming, not in a way that drowns you, but in a way that reminds you, this was always the foundation of everything. You might notice a familiar presence near you, not necessarily someone you knew in your last life, but someone who feels like home, a guide, a companion, a being of light or form who meets you with the kind of recognition you've always craved, but could never quite name. They don't speak in words, they communicate in knowing. Their thoughts are felt, not heard. Their love is not declared, it is experienced in full, like standing in sunlight that embraces every cell of your spirit. They are there not to judge, but to help you orient yourself, to help you understand where you are, and what comes next. And still, you're aware, you're you, the same consciousness, the same spark, the memories are still there. The people you loved in life are still real to you. You remember your childhood, your passions, your wounds, and yet, all of it feels different now, softened by perspective. It's like looking back on a play you once acted in, one you were deeply invested in at the time, but now, you understand it was one chapter in a much longer story, one that never truly ends. This is the part no one told you. Death is not a losing of self, it's a restoration. It's the moment you take off the mask you forgot you were wearing, the roles dissolve, the expectations vanish. The noise of the world, the survival instinct, the distractions, the chaos, fades into a kind of silence that is not empty, but full of meaning. And in that fullness, you realize how much more of you there has always been. Think of it like waking up from a dream that felt real. While in the dream, you reacted to everything as if it were your entire reality. You felt fear, joy, confusion. But the moment you woke up, you realized there was more to you than that dream self. You remembered your greater self, your bed, your room, the world beyond the dream. That is what death feels like, not like being erased, but like being recalled to the greater truth of who you've always been. You don't lose anything that matters, you don't become something else, you simply become more of who you were meant to be. And everything you thought you needed to cling to, your identity, your achievements, your regrets, starts to feel like a costume you wore for a time, now lovingly folded and put away. There is no fear in this state, only wonder, only reverence. You look at your life with new eyes, not to judge it, but to understand it. The moments that once confused you start to make sense. The pain you carried becomes a lesson, not a scar. The love you gave becomes a thread of light that follows you into this new space. And the people you loved, they're not gone either. You feel them. You know they'll join you in their time, just as others joined before you. The illusion of separation breaks down, and in that unity, you are finally, truly, at peace. So no, death is not what you were told. It is not the extinguishing of the flame, it is the removal of the glass that dimmed your light. And when that moment comes, when the body grows quiet, and the breath becomes still, you will not fade, you will rise. You will awaken from the dream called life, and remember, with breathtaking clarity, that you have always been so much more than you ever imagined. What if I told you that when your heart stops beating and your body falls still, you don't just vanish into darkness, you step into a room beyond the room you thought was reality? The moment of clinical death, what we've been taught to fear as the absolute end, isn't the shutdown of consciousness. In fact, it's the very moment when consciousness breaks free. You don't dissolve into nothingness, you expand into everything. You're still there, but now, you're above it all, detached, observing, aware, in a way you've never been aware before. At first, you may not even realize what's happened. You'll see the room, the people, the equipment. You might see the doctors working quickly, calling out your name, trying to revive what no longer holds your essence. You'll see the faces of your loved ones, pale, tearful, shocked, but something feels off, because you're looking at the scene from a strange angle. You're above it, floating perhaps near the ceiling, or suspended in a space that feels both in the room and far beyond it. And in that instant, a surreal calm washes over you. There's no panic, no urgency, only clarity. You know what's happening, but you're not afraid. In fact, for the first time in your life, you may feel what it means to be completely at peace. The noise of the world has quieted, but your inner perception is sharper than ever. Your senses haven't dulled, they've multiplied. You see without eyes, hear without ears, feel without skin. You are thought and presence, vivid and untethered. As you hover above the body, you'll likely recognize it as yours. But you'll also feel a strange detachment. Like seeing an old photograph of yourself, you recognize the image, but you know it's no longer who you are. The body feels like an article of clothing you just took off. Familiar, but no longer necessary. What surprises you isn't that you left the body, it's how natural it feels to have done so. In this state, you may try to speak, to reach out to your family members, to let them know you're still here, but your words don't form the way they used to. You no longer operate through the mechanics of vocal cords or breath. Instead, you feel communication rising from your intention. You think, and the message radiates outward like waves in a still pond. You may even sense someone nearby catching it, not with their ears, but with their heart. A flash of a feeling, a sense of your presence, a sudden calm. That's you, reaching across the veil. And then something even more mysterious begins to happen. You don't just hear the voices in the room, you hear the thoughts. The doctor's mind racing, calculating, hopeful but bracing for what's next. The nurse's compassion blooming beneath the professionalism. The silent pleading of your loved one, whispering, "Please, not yet." These thoughts are no longer private, because the boundaries that kept them hidden no longer apply to you. You are attuned to an energetic frequency that holds both the seen and the unseen, the spoken and the unspoken. Your awareness grows broader still. You begin to perceive things you couldn't have known. You see into adjacent rooms. You sense the presence of others arriving, beings of light, familiar and unfamiliar, surrounding you like a sacred escort. You feel time stretch and bend. Seconds feel like minutes. Minutes feel like eternities. Yet nothing feels rushed. Everything is unfolding with perfect timing, perfect intelligence. You might even find yourself drifting from the room altogether. Not because you're being pulled, but because you're being invited. There's no force, only flow. You move not with effort, but with intention. You think of a place, and you're there. You think of a person, and you feel their essence. Distance collapses. You are no longer bound by space. You are space, but still, the room lingers. The one you left behind. You may feel drawn to stay a little longer, to comfort those who remain, to say goodbye, even if your words can't be heard in the way they used to be. You may whisper into their hearts, send visions into their dreams, brush their cheek with the wind. All of it is real. All of it is felt on levels they may not yet understand. Eventually, you begin to sense that the room you're in is not the only one. Behind it, layered into the very fabric of space, there's another room. One that has always existed but was invisible to your physical senses. This is the room beyond the room, the gateway space between dimensions. It's where your awareness begins to stretch into new shapes, where colors seem to sing, where light carries memory, where love has form. This space is alive. It responds to your thoughts. It adjusts to your readiness. It's both empty and filled, vast and intimate. You may begin to see your guide, the one who's always been with you, even if you couldn't perceive them before. They may appear as a familiar face, or as a being of pure radiance. They don't speak with words. They communicate in truth. Their presence brings with it a deep remembering that you've done this before, that this transition isn't new, only forgotten. The guide may not take you anywhere immediately. Instead, they may simply stay with you, allowing you to process, to observe, to understand. You're not rushed. There's no pressure to move on. Time here doesn't behave the way it did on Earth. You are given exactly what you need to integrate what just occurred, to feel the depth of your own existence outside of form. It's here that many souls begin to reflect. They look back on the life just lived, not in judgment, but in wonder. They see the connections they made, the love they gave, the pain they endured, not as failures or achievements, but as experiences, each one glowing with meaning, teaching, resonance. In this space, you begin to see the beauty of your human story, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Some linger here for what feels like days, others only moments, but all feel the same clarity, the sense that something sacred has begun, that this is not the end of you, but the opening of you. That beyond the walls of that hospital room, or that hospice bed, or that quiet corner where you took your last breath, there is a vast expanse calling you forward. And still, you remain aware of the room behind you. You see the way people respond to your passing. Some are breaking, not knowing how to go on. Others are silent, absorbing the moment in stillness. You want them to know, you're not gone, you're just elsewhere, not unreachable, just invisible, still present in the moments that matter, still brushing against them in memory, in emotion, in energy. Eventually, you'll let that room fade from your attention, not because it isn't sacred, but because your soul is ready to explore what lies beyond. But you'll carry the imprint of it with you, the faces, the voices, the laughter and the tears, all of it becomes part of your vibration. And you, now aware in ways you never imagined, will carry those echoes forward, into the next space, the next lesson, the next chapter of your eternal becoming, because you were never meant to disappear. You were always meant to awaken, and death, in its quiet, astonishing grace, was only ever the opening of your eyes. What if I told you that the judgment you fear after death doesn't come from any higher power? It comes from you. So many people carry this deep, ancient terror about what happens when they die. Not just fear of the unknown, but fear of being judged, of being weighed, of being punished for the things they did or failed to do. It's been drilled into your psyche that when this life ends, you'll stand trial before a cosmic authority who will determine whether you're worthy of peace or cast into eternal suffering. But that idea, as terrifying as it is, was never the truth. It's a distortion, a story designed to keep you compliant, afraid, and easily controlled. The real truth is something much more compassionate and empowering. There is no external judge waiting for you on the other side, no tribunal, no divine punishment. What waits for you instead is the mirror of your own consciousness. And in that mirror, what you bring with you becomes the lens through which you experience the transition. Fear, especially unprocessed fear, becomes the turbulence in the otherwise smooth flight from this life to the next. It isn't imposed upon you, you generate it through resistance. Imagine standing in a vast field of warm, glowing air, perfectly calm, peaceful, welcoming. But instead of walking into it with trust, you tense up, you hold your breath, you cling to the past. That clenching doesn't stop the transition, but it creates friction. It clouds your perception. It distorts what would otherwise be a graceful shift. This turbulence isn't a punishment, it's a reflection. It shows you where you still believe in fear more than love, where you still believe you are separate, where you still believe you are guilty. When the soul resists letting go, it doesn't fall into hellfire. It simply experiences a more disoriented passage. There's confusion, emotional echoes, fragmented impressions. The soul may hover near the earth plane longer than necessary. It may not immediately realize it has left the body. It might feel stuck in a loop, replaying moments from its life, searching for something familiar, trying to make sense of what just happened. But all of this, even the confusion, is temporary. It passes. And once the fear softens, clarity returns. The turbulence calms. The soul is never abandoned, only allowed the space to find its own center again. One of the most common reasons for this fear is the belief that you're not ready to die. Maybe you think you didn't do enough. Maybe you have regrets. Maybe you think you're unworthy of peace because of your mistakes. But death doesn't measure your worth. Death doesn't keep score. Death simply opens the door, and it's you who decides how you walk through it. If you step into that doorway carrying shame, you may briefly project that shame onto the environment you enter. But you're not being punished. You're seeing your own beliefs reflected back at you until you are ready to release them. This is why some people report experiencing darkness or disorientation immediately after death, not because they were bad, but because they brought their fear with them. They expected punishment, and so they momentarily created a space that matched that expectation. It doesn't last. Beings of light stand nearby, waiting patiently. They don't intervene forcefully, because growth cannot be forced, but they are always present, always holding space for you to find your way back to the deeper truth. And what is that truth? That you are already forgiven, that you were never condemned, that love is not something you earn, it's what you're made of. The only thing keeping you from remembering that is your own fear. But the moment you loosen your grip, even slightly, the light rushes in. It floods the space. It restores your memory. It shows you that the only judgment you ever faced came from within yourself. Fear is not your enemy. It is a teacher. And even in the after-death state, it teaches by contrast. The more you hold on to it, the more you crave peace. The more you resist, the more you long to surrender. Eventually, the soul always chooses the light, not because it's forced to, but because it finally remembers that it came from that light to begin with. This is why acceptance is so powerful. Souls who approach death with openness and trust often glide into the next dimension with incredible grace. There's no confusion, no distortion, no disorientation. They feel themselves lifting, smiling, embracing what comes next like a familiar song. Their transition is smooth, not because they were saints, but because they allowed it. They let go. They surrendered to what already belonged to them. And you can begin that process now. You don't have to wait until your final breath to practice letting go. You can begin releasing the fear now, by questioning it, by challenging the beliefs that created it, by remembering that love is your true nature. The more you do this, the more gracefully you will one day pass through that sacred threshold. Not because you earned it, but because you aligned with it. Imagine how different the world would be if people weren't afraid of death, if they knew that no punishment awaited them, that no divine being was tallying their sins, if they understood that what comes next is shaped by their own inner landscape, not by external rules. Fear would lose its grip. People would live with more honesty, more courage, more love. Because, without the fear of punishment, all that remains is the desire to live truthfully. You might wonder, what about people who lived cruelly, who harmed others, who caused real pain? Are they just forgiven, just like that? The answer is more nuanced. Those souls don't face punishment. They face themselves. They experience, with full awareness, the impact of their actions. They feel what others felt, not as a sentence, but as a revelation. Not because anyone forces them to, but because consciousness is designed to expand, to learn, to grow. It is inevitable. And even those who wandered far from love eventually return to it, not through fear, but through understanding. And you? You're not here by accident. You're reading these words because your soul already senses the truth beneath them. You've felt the fear before. Maybe it's haunted you in the quiet moments. Maybe it's clung to the edges of your beliefs. But now, something deeper is awakening. A knowing, a recognition. That what you've been told about death was never the full story. There is no throne waiting to judge you, no fiery realm ready to swallow you whole. What there is light, memory, truth. What there is you, remembering yourself as you've always been. Vast, eternal, unbreakable, and the only turbulence you'll ever face is the fear you're willing to release. So when that moment comes, whether years from now or in some distant lifetime, you'll know. You'll feel it in your soul, the resistance fading, the fear dissolving, the surrender rising, and the door, already open, welcoming you into a peace that was never withheld, only waited for. What if I told you that what you see in the first few moments after death isn't random or even objectively real, but a mirror reflecting what you most deeply believe to be true? Your first steps beyond the veil are shaped not by divine decree, but by the architecture of your own consciousness. You don't see heaven or light or loved ones because they're required set pieces in a predetermined script. You see them because your consciousness expects them, calls them forth, needs them to make sense of the transition, and consciousness, being far more fluid and intelligent than the rigid mind can understand, accommodates this expectation with astonishing grace. Seth spoke of this as the symbolic translation layer of the after-death experience, not an illusion in the way dreams are fleeting, but a kind of interpretive space that allows your deeper self to process what's happening without being overwhelmed. Because for most souls, going from physical life to full non-physical awareness in one jolt would be like stepping from a dark room into the sun. So instead, you enter a gentle dawn. And the colors in that dawn? They are painted by your own beliefs. If you believed you would meet Jesus, then Jesus may appear, radiant, loving, with arms wide open. You will feel the warmth of his presence, the safety in his gaze. the familiarity of his love. He will look exactly as you imagined: robes, sandals, light. But as the moments unfold, you may notice something curious. He doesn't speak in the way you expected. His face might shift subtly. His form might blur and reform into someone else. And then you'll realize you're not seeing an external figure. You're meeting your own inner symbol of divine acceptance. Your higher self used the shape of Jesus not to deceive, but to guide. If your beliefs centered around Buddha, then perhaps you'll find yourself seated in a peaceful garden, lotus blossoms drifting in still water, the quiet hum of eternity around you. The figure you encounter may smile without words, communicate without movement. Again, it's not an outside deity arriving to claim you. It's your own consciousness providing the image most aligned with your understanding of spiritual comfort. And if you believed in nothing, no religion, no God, no saints, you may find yourself in a blank space, a soft, endless field of white or black or pure silence. And it won't be frightening. It will be familiar, in a strange and comforting way, because your consciousness knows not to overwhelm you. It gives you a neutral canvas upon which to find your bearings. Eventually, figures may emerge. Not because you summon them consciously, but because the deeper layers of your awareness begin to remember what lies beyond belief. The reason this happens is simple. The transition from life to death is not meant to shock you. It is meant to ease you into remembrance. Your soul doesn't just wake up with full cosmic awareness in an instant. It moves through layers. Think of it as decompressing. You need symbols to help bridge the gap between the structured reality you just left and the limitless freedom you're about to enter. And your belief system provides the blueprint for those symbols. This doesn't mean what you see isn't real. It means it's real in a way that's tailored to you. These are psychic realities, energy formations created by and for your consciousness to orient itself. Like dream environments that feel hyper-real, these post-death landscapes are meaningful, responsive, and filled with intelligence. They serve a sacred function to help you feel safe, understood, and prepared. You may see angels if you believed in angels. Not generic winged beings, but ones with features familiar to your soul. Their faces might resemble loved ones. Their light might feel like music. If your tradition honored ancestors, then perhaps it's them who greet you. Grandparents, great-grandparents, those whose blood still flows in your veins. They appear not because they are trapped in your vision of the afterlife, but because you are calling them through memory and resonance. And their presence calms you, grounds you, guides you. But as the initial transition deepens, something extraordinary happens. The symbolic begins to dissolve. The Jesus figure, the Buddha, the angels, the ancestors, all begin to blend into a more unified field of awareness. You realize they are not separate entities, but aspects of a larger intelligence. You understand they were masks worn by the infinite, so that you could feel safe stepping into its embrace. Not lies, but layers. Not fiction, but function. This is why no two people report the exact same thing after death. Some speak of tunnels of light, others of cities made of sound, others of empty space filled with knowing. These are not contradictions, they are reflections, mirrors held up to different souls in different stages of readiness. Your post-death environment meets you where you are. It speaks your language. It shows you what you need to see in order to release your earthly framework and expand into higher knowing. Even people who believed in punishment sometimes manifest brief experiences of darkness, not because they are being judged, but because they expect to be. The environment responds to that expectation with compassion, creating a symbolic space where that fear can be processed and released. And once they accept that no external punishment is coming, the light returns, not imposed from above, but rising from within. This is how powerful your consciousness is. It doesn't just observe reality, it creates the conditions of its unfolding. This power doesn't end at death. In many ways, it becomes even more immediate. In the non-physical realms, your thoughts shape environment, your beliefs sculpt perception. You are not at the mercy of a divine storyboard. You are the projector, the lens, and the light. This is why some advanced souls skip the symbolic stage altogether. If they have already shed rigid belief systems during life, if they've cultivated a direct relationship with the infinite without needing intermediaries, then the transition can be rapid. They step directly into the field of pure consciousness, no figures, no voices, just presence. But for most, the symbols come first, not as barriers, but as bridges. You'll find that over time, though time behaves differently there, the symbols fall away. You no longer need Jesus to feel unconditional love. You no longer need Buddha to feel peace. You no longer need your grandmother's voice to feel connection, because you become the love, you become the peace, you become the connection. The outer images were training wheels. Eventually, your soul remembers how to ride on its own. And when that remembrance comes, it doesn't erase what you believed, it blesses it. You'll look back on those initial images, not as childish dreams, but as sacred stepping stones. You'll see how perfectly your consciousness designed the path, how every figure, every light, every room was exactly what you needed to open just a little more. So when the time comes, when your breath slows, and your eyes begin to turn inward, don't be surprised if the first thing you see is the face of a being you loved, or the glow of a light you always imagined. Let it come, let it comfort you, let it remind you that you are never alone, and that the universe speaks to each soul in its own sacred dialect, because in the end, you won't be walking into someone else's idea of heaven. You'll be walking into the shape of your own becoming. What if I told you that after death, you don't immediately drift off into some far-off heavenly realm, that instead, you linger, present, conscious, and watching, for 3 full days. The moment your physical body takes its final breath is not the moment you disappear. It's the moment you begin to adjust. Not adjust in the way the body would heal, but in the way consciousness slowly begins to release its deep entanglement with form. In those first hours and days after death, your soul is not swept away into some distant, unreachable place. It remains close, very close, hovering just beyond the veil of the physical world you just stepped out of. You can see your loved ones, you can feel their thoughts, you can observe what's happening around your physical form. But more than that, you begin to understand what just happened. This 3-day window isn't random. It's deeply woven into the fabric of spiritual transition. Seth described it as a real, energetic, and perceptual period during which the soul reorients itself. The body is no longer needed, the senses are no longer physical, and yet, you are still very much you. You still have your memories, your emotions, your point of view. But the rules are different now. You begin to realize that you no longer need to blink to see, or breathe to be alive. And even though your body may appear lifeless to others, you're more alive, more vividly aware than you've ever been. Why 3 days? The number has echoed through ancient cultures for thousands of years. It's not just a poetic symbol, it aligns with something real. Many traditions hold sacred ceremonies that span 3 days: wakes, vigils, mourning periods. These rituals are not merely symbolic, they are instinctual responses to something the soul knows, but the mind has forgotten. That in the hours after death, the veil is thinnest, the presence is closest. The communication is loudest, not in words, but in symbols, in sensations, in signs. In this phase, you're often nearby, not out of attachment or fear, but because there is something unfinished, not in life, but in orientation. You are slowly detaching from the density of the body and integrating into the lightness of spirit. But it's not a hard cut, it's a gentle loosening. The silver cord may have already unraveled, but the echo of the physical experience is still vibrating within you. You may hear the conversations of your loved ones as they gather. You may see them holding your hand, not knowing that you are watching, that you are still there. And they feel you, even if they don't know how to explain it. That sudden sense of warmth in the room, that flicker of movement in the corner of the eye, that inexplicable peace that falls over them in a moment of sorrow. That's you. These are not coincidences. They are part of the design. You are given this window not only to adjust, but to say goodbye, on your terms, in your way. During this time, many souls reach out, not through words, but through energy. They leave impressions, they nudge objects, they create synchronicities. A favorite song plays, a light flickers. A dream delivers a message so vivid it brings tears. These signs are not fantasies. They are part of the natural function of consciousness during the adjustment period. You are not trying to haunt or scare. You are trying to signal, I am here, I made it, and I still love you. Some souls feel a pull to visit places that mattered to them, a childhood home, a favorite forest path, a lover's memory. You move through space not by walking, but by intention. Where your heart draws you, you arrive. Time doesn't behave the same. You might spend what feels like hours watching your family grieve, and then shift into a timeless space of rest without ever leaving their side. It's not about distance, it's about presence. And in this 3-day window, your presence is uniquely fluid, capable of existing in both the earthly and spiritual dimensions. This is also when guides begin to gently make themselves known, not as intruders, but as companions. They appear as feelings first, a warmth beside you, a soft current guiding your attention, a sensation of being gently held. If you are ready, they show you more. They begin the process of reminding you who you really are, beyond the role you played, beyond the story you just finished. They never rush, they never force. They wait for your readiness, because your free will continues, even after death. You are always sovereign. You are never pushed. Not every soul is fully aware during this period. Some may sleep, especially if death was sudden or traumatic. This is not unconsciousness in the human sense. It's more like a rest cycle, a pause while the psyche regroups. Others remain sharply aware, observing everything with a heightened clarity that borders on the miraculous. They watch their loved ones speak, cry, laugh, and remember. And with each passing hour, the emotional threads that tied them to form begin to soften, not in grief, but in understanding. You see, this period is sacred not because of what it leads to, but because of what it allows. It allows closure. It allows clarity. It allows the soul to realize that death is not a collapse. It is an expansion. The 3 days are not just for you, they are for those you left behind. They are for the energetic weaving that happens between worlds, the invisible bridge that lets you say, I am at peace. And so can you be. By the end of the 3rd day, something begins to shift. Not because you've disappeared, but because your frequency begins to rise. The tether to the earthly realm weakens naturally. The draw toward the higher dimensions becomes stronger. You may feel less interested in the scene of your departure and more curious about the landscape ahead. The light beckons, not a spotlight or a tunnel, but an awareness, a sense of home, a resonance that sings your name without sound. This is the moment when many begin to transition into the next stage of orientation, where the review, the healing, and the soul's deeper journey begins. But what's important is this: you were never absent. You didn't die in a flash and disappear into the unknown. You remained, you observed, you felt, you reached out, you lingered in love, and if your loved ones knew how close you were, they'd never feel so alone in their grief. Because the 3-day adjustment period is a promise, a window of time where the heart is still bridged, the connection still vibrant, the soul still near. So when you light a candle in those first few days, it's not for tradition alone, it's a beacon. When you speak to your loved one, you're not talking to emptiness, you're being heard. When you feel that sudden presence behind you, when the air feels full, when the bird lands on your windowsill and stares just a little too long, that's not coincidence. That's confirmation. You're not alone in your mourning, because they're not gone. They're still here, just on the other side of a veil so thin, it can be touched in silence, in memory, in love. And then, gently, when it's time, they move forward, not away from you, but toward a deeper truth that you, too, will one day remember. What if I told you that the first faces you see after you die aren't strangers, angels, or judges? They're familiar, but not quite as you remember them. There's a moment, often gentle, sometimes startling, when your awareness lifts fully from the physical, and your surroundings shift into something radiant, expansive, and still deeply personal. In that moment, you're met. Not with confusion or interrogation, but with love so tangible, it feels like being wrapped in memory. But here's the twist. What you see, who you see, has been carefully chosen, not by someone else, but by your own deeper consciousness and the spiritual beings who've known you across lifetimes. They're waiting for you, and they've prepared for this meeting with precision and care. They're not random, They're your welcoming committee. Not a name you might have expected to hear in the afterlife, but it's exactly what it feels like. A team assembled not to judge or question, but to help you cross the threshold without fear. They've taken on forms that will soothe you, calm you, stabilize you in the newness of the experience. And while these forms may look like your grandmother, your childhood dog, or the teacher who once saved you with a single kind word, they are more than they appear. This is the part few understand. The beings who greet you are not always who they seem, but that doesn't make them any less real. They are expressions of consciousness, soul allies who have traveled with you through other realms, other incarnations. In order to make this transition easier for you, they wear the faces that will feel safe. Not deceptive, but symbolic. Not fantasy, but compassion rendered into form. Your mind, still adjusting, still unraveling from the weight of earthly belief, needs a bridge. And the bridge is built from familiarity. Imagine walking into a room you've never seen before, filled with colors you don't have words for, sounds that resonate through your bones rather than your ears. You're wide-eyed, expanded, and slightly unmoored. Then, suddenly, you see the smiling face of your grandfather, who passed years ago. His presence calms you instantly. He doesn't speak in the old voice. He speaks through knowing. His form glows, more vivid than you ever remembered, but you feel no confusion. You feel love, safety, continuity. Or maybe it's your childhood friend, the one who died young, the one whose absence stayed with you like an echo. They appear not as a ghost, but as a radiant version of themselves, free of pain, of sorrow, of time. Their smile isn't just about memory, it's a code, a signal that says, you made it, you're not alone, you're safe now. For some, it's even a beloved pet, a dog bounding toward you, tail wagging, a cat brushing against your ankle, the pure love of an animal, unmistakable and direct. These presences aren't hallucinations, they're not tricks of a dying mind. They're carefully selected forms used by advanced beings, your soul family, your guides, your eternal allies, so that you don't panic in your re-entry into the spirit world. You're not greeted by their truest essence all at once because your consciousness is still orienting itself to the speed of the non-physical. These gentle masks, this loving camouflage, give you space to remember gradually. There is something masterful in this orchestration. Your welcoming committee knows you intimately. They know what will make you feel safe, which faces will spark memory, which voices will calm your system. This isn't a production, it's a sacred rite of transition, and it's deeply personal. No two souls experience it the same way, because no two souls carry the same inner map. Your reunion is designed for your unique frequency, your life story, your unspoken hopes and fears. As the initial shock softens and your spirit acclimates, the masks begin to lift. Not suddenly, but naturally. You begin to notice that your grandmother's eyes hold more than her earth personality. There's a wisdom there that wasn't fully expressed in her lifetime. You may realize that her form shimmers, shifts slightly. You'll understand that she is not just who she was, she is something more. She's an aspect of a greater being, a guide who walked with you before you knew names or bodies. The moment you're ready, they'll reveal more. But never before, because this welcome is not about enlightenment. It's about easing the passage into it. This moment of reunion is often filled with overwhelming emotion, not sadness, but a kind of sacred joy. It's the feeling of being remembered, of being seen by those who knew you before the world shaped you. It's the undoing of isolation. And often, it's the very first time you understand what unconditional love really feels like, because it is not merely directed at you, it flows through you. It is you, and yet, they don't hold you there. They don't trap you in nostalgia. Once the welcome is complete, once your soul has adjusted to the knowing that it is, indeed, eternal, the welcoming committee begins to step back, not away from you, but back into their true roles. Their forms may shift, their messages may deepen. One may remain as a personal guide, others may become teachers. Some may simply merge back into the field of light, their purpose in your arrival fulfilled. This is also why so many people who have near-death experiences report seeing only some familiar figures, not all, because your committee isn't made up of every person you've ever loved. It's made up of those who are best suited to help you remember who you are. That may include past life allies you don't consciously recall. It may include beings of light who never incarnated with you, but who have traveled beside you across many journeys. Their goal is not to satisfy your emotional curiosity. Their goal is to help you stabilize your soul's frequency after the disorienting release of form. As your inner senses open further, you may begin to remember them not as relatives or pets or friends, but as threads of soul energy that have been part of your existence long before this lifetime. Their forms dissolve, but their presence remains. You understand then that you're not just returning to a place, you're returning to a community, a spiritual ecosystem where every soul has a role, a purpose, a resonance. You weren't cast out at birth. You weren't forgotten. You've always been held, always known, and now, with the veil lifted, you see that the love you longed for never left you. It was waiting, just beyond the edge of memory. So when the time comes, and your breath fades, and your eyes close for the last time, don't be afraid of who you might meet. Don't expect some cosmic stranger in robes. Expect love. Expect recognition. Expect faces you adored, energies you've known since before birth. And when they appear, smiling, glowing, full of presence, know that they are not the past. They are your bridge. They are the gentle hands of the universe, guiding you home in the only way you would recognize it, through love disguised as memory, until memory gives way to truth. What if I told you that when you die, you don't float into some formless void or dissolve into blinding white light? Instead, you awaken in a place that feels so familiar, so personal, that for a moment you might not even realize you've died. Imagine this: you open your eyes, and around you is the street you grew up on. The smell of lilacs in the air, the sun warm on your face, the sound of birds echoing across a field that hasn't existed in the physical world for decades. Or perhaps you find yourself in a little cabin nestled in the woods, a sanctuary you used to dream about but never visited in life. Or maybe it's your childhood bedroom, exactly as it once was, complete with the quilt your grandmother made and the light streaming through the same curtain pattern you remember touching as a child. These places are not hallucinations. They're not figments of a dying imagination. They are energetic constructs, blueprints crafted not by external forces, but by your own consciousness, with the assistance of advanced spiritual architects who understand the sacredness of transition. In the initial phase after death, your soul is still closely tied to its earth identity. You still think in terms of places, people, structure. So the transition begins not with formless infinity, but with structure that feels deeply safe. It's like stepping into a dream, but one more real than waking life ever felt. The colors are sharper, the light is alive, the very air feels conscious. This is not a heaven in the religious sense. It's a customized energetic environment, a temporary realm of rest, recovery, and remembrance. These spaces are known by many names across spiritual traditions: Summerland, the Astral Garden, the City of Peace. But the core idea remains the same. The environment you wake up in is built from the emotional and psychic imprints that shaped you in life. That cozy cafe you used to write in? It's here. The mountaintop you never quite made it to in life? You can walk it now, step by step, breathless with wonder. The garden your mother used to tend, the library you always dreamed of, the lake you visited as a child and never forgot, all of it is available. Not because you're clinging to the past, but because the soul processes new awareness through the familiar. In this realm, thoughts have substance. Emotion shapes terrain. If you feel peaceful, your surroundings bloom. If you desire solitude, the landscape widens. If you long for company, a loved one might appear, sometimes a guide in a familiar disguise, sometimes a genuine soul you once knew. These are not illusions. They are co-created realities, temporary sanctuaries where your consciousness can acclimate without shock. They are real, but not permanent. Just as dreams can be vivid and meaningful while still being transitory, these environments are meaningful without being fixed. The design of your surroundings here isn't arbitrary. It's intentional. Every detail, the warmth of the air, the texture of the ground, the way the light glows but doesn't burn, is constructed to match your soul's vibrational comfort zone. You are not thrown into eternity unprepared. You are met with softness, with familiarity, with the textures and tones that whisper to your spirit, you are safe, you are home. And what's remarkable is that even though these places are familiar, they are never stagnant. You might begin in a replica of your childhood home, but gradually that home will shift. The walls might expand, the view outside the window might transform into a new landscape. What this reveals is that the soul's environment evolves with its awareness. The more you remember who you truly are, the less you need outer symbols. But they remain for as long as they serve you. For many, these landscapes include nature, endless fields of green, crystalline waterfalls, gardens that respond to thought. These places feel alive because they are. They are not physical in the earthly sense, but they are structured energy. They respond to your intentions, your questions, even your emotions. Sit beneath a tree and think of a lost friend, and that friend might appear in a beam of light or in a form you recognize. Walk along a path in silence, and you may feel the presence of a guide joining you, not with fanfare, but with subtle resonance. Some people awaken in cities, not chaotic, crowded ones, but luminous cities made of soft light and harmony. These places are communal spaces for souls who have grown accustomed to collective living. There are temples, not for worship, but for remembrance. Halls of learning, not to be taught, but to recover what you already know. Parks where souls gather to share, to rest, to exchange frequencies. These cities are not mandatory destinations, they are options, just like everything else in this stage of transition. For some, the environment might be more abstract. A house made of light, a sky filled with stars that respond to your thoughts, rooms without walls, where emotions decorate the space like stained glass. Whatever appears, it is never random. It is an echo of you, your preferences, your needs, your essence. And yes, some souls resist this beauty at first. They may feel undeserving. They may cling to guilt or confusion or the belief that they must suffer before they can rest. In such cases, the environment may begin more neutral, a misty landscape, a soft gray room, a quiet field, not because they are being punished, but because that's what they can accept at that stage. Over time, as the soul relaxes, forgives, and remembers, the scenery brightens, the colors return, the forms become more fluid and radiant. The soul doesn't have to do anything special to earn this, only to allow it. This is also why signs and dreams from loved ones who've passed often contain vivid landscapes. When someone sees their grandmother in a flowered meadow, or their father fishing on a perfect lake, that's not imagination. That's a glimpse into the temporary realm their consciousness is inhabiting. They're not trapped there. They're not stuck in a looping memory. They're resting, recovering, integrating. They are being lovingly held in a space built from everything that ever brought them peace. Eventually, the soul will feel a pull, an invitation to move beyond these temporary heavens. Not because they are lacking, but because the deeper self begins to stir. The part of you that remembers your soul mission, the part of you that longs to rejoin your greater essence. That's when the scenery begins to dissolve, not vanish, but transform. The house fades. The garden opens into vast fields of light. The city walls dissolve into song. And then, you begin the next phase, not a place, but a vibration, not a room, but a reality made of knowing. But that comes later. First comes the welcome, the familiar, the lovingly crafted world where your soul can rest its weary feet, gaze upon the life it just left, and realize with awe, I am still here, I am still me, and the journey is only just beginning. Because death, despite what you've been taught, is not the end of home. It is the expansion of home, and these sacred, familiar landscapes, the ones you wake up in, built just for you, are the first proof that love was always preparing a place for your return. What if I told you that the people who've made the deepest impact on your life, the ones who shaped you, broke you, awakened you, or walked beside you when no one else would, aren't just chance encounters or lucky coincidences, they are part of something much older than this life? There's a quiet truth that lives beneath every connection you've ever had. The ones who truly matter never left you, not really. They are part of your soul family, a spiritual network so deeply woven into your being that even death cannot sever its threads. These are the souls who travel with you across lifetimes, who change form and name and role, but whose energetic imprint is unmistakable. You know them by the way your heart recognizes them instantly. Even if your mind can't explain why. You've met them before. and you'll meet them again. Sometimes they come as parents, children, lovers, friends. Other times they appear as the ones who challenge you the most, the antagonist who cracked your shell, the stranger who triggered your deepest fears, the teacher who forced you to wake up. These relationships aren't random. They're rehearsed on a higher plane before you ever take your first breath. They are contracts, not of obligation, but of love. When you cross over, you begin to remember. Not instantly, but gradually, like fragments of a forgotten language returning. You remember the faces beneath the masks, the souls behind the roles. You begin to see that your most important relationships didn't start with birth and won't end with death. They are eternal patterns, currents of energy that flow together again and again for growth, for healing, for awakening. These soul groups are not hierarchical, they're not assigned or enforced. They are vibrational families, beings who share a similar energetic signature, who are magnetically drawn to one another across dimensions. Sometimes you travel with a small core of souls for dozens of lifetimes, rotating roles like actors in a spiritual play. One life, your best friend becomes your sister. Another life, your son becomes your teacher. You've loved them as many people, in many places, wearing many faces. And the connection only deepens with each journey. That's why, when someone enters your life, and it feels like you've known them forever, you probably have. That instant recognition, that overwhelming feeling that they've always been with you, it's not imagination. It's remembrance breaking through the veil of amnesia that human life demands. You agreed to forget. All of us did. Because the forgetting is what makes this life real, what allows true free will. But when the body falls away and the soul begins to expand again, the forgetting dissolves. You see the map. You remember the story. You realize that you weren't walking alone. You were moving through a carefully choreographed dance with beings who love you more than you've ever understood. And when you reunite on the other side, it's not always with fireworks or dramatic emotion. Sometimes it's as simple as a smile, a gaze, a frequency that wraps around you like a song you hadn't realized you were humming all along. You don't need to speak, you just remember. You remember the pain, the laughter, the lifetimes you shared. You remember how many times they've pulled you back from the edge, and how many times you've done the same for them. These soul companions have roles beyond Earth. They're not just waiting for you in some afterlife landscape. They are part of your guidance team. Some stay on the other side while you incarnate, serving as protectors, whispering guidance into your dreams, nudging you toward the very lessons you agreed to face. Others incarnate with you, walking beside you in human form, all while knowing, on some level, that the bond between you runs far deeper than blood or circumstance. What's even more profound is that not all of them are currently in body. Some remain fully non-physical, but that doesn't make them distant. In fact, their presence is often stronger than those who walk beside you in form. You've felt it, the invisible comfort that shows up when you're breaking down. The calm that floods you when you think you can't go on. That's not random, that's not you getting stronger. That's a soul companion stepping close, reminding you of your light, even if you can't see them. When you return to the non-physical realm, your soul family gathers. Not all at once, not in a formal ceremony, but in waves of recognition. Each encounter peels back another layer of who you thought you were, revealing who you've always been. You embrace, not with arms, but with energy, with total transparency. There's no need to explain or apologize. Every emotion, every choice, every mistake is seen with clarity and compassion. They don't judge you, they celebrate you, because they know how hard it is to forget, and how beautiful it is to remember. In some cases, you may encounter a soul you didn't expect, someone you had a difficult relationship with, maybe even someone who hurt you. But here, there is no pretense. You see the contract for what it was, the soul behind the pain, the lesson behind the loss. And often, that soul is part of your family too, not because they were good to you, but because they helped you awaken in a way that no one else could. The deepest wounds often come from those who love you most at the soul level, because they are willing to play the hardest roles if it will help you evolve. This is one of the most liberating truths of all. Your soul companions don't abandon you, not in death, not in time, not in silence. They are always connected to you through energetic threads that transcend space. and those threads vibrate with memory, with love, with purpose. You can feel them even now, in moments of sudden peace, in déjà vu, in the dreams that seem too vivid to be random. You are part of a constellation, a network of light that pulses across lifetimes. And every soul in that constellation plays a role. Some are background figures, others are central, but all are sacred, all are chosen, all are family. And when you awaken after death, when you step out of the dream of this life and back into the clarity of your eternal self, you won't be met by strangers, you'll be met by home. By laughter you haven't heard in years but instantly recognize. By eyes that have watched over you in every dark night. By hands that once held yours under different stars, in different skins, in different centuries, because you are not a single story. You are a woven epic, told across dimensions, carried by souls who never let you go, and when this chapter ends, they'll be there to help you turn the page. What if I told you that in the moment after death, you no longer just experience reality, you create it, not metaphorically, not with effort, but effortlessly, instantly, and completely. In the non-physical realm, the separation between thought and form dissolves. There's no delay, no process, no distance between your imagination and manifestation. What you think becomes. If you think of a field filled with golden flowers under an endless sky, that field appears beneath your feet. If you remember a song that once made your soul ache with beauty, you hear it again, note for note, but somehow deeper, richer, as if the music itself is alive. Your thoughts don't float off into some mental fog, they crystallize into experience, they become your reality. At first, this can be disorienting. You're used to a world where thoughts are trapped inside, where you have to speak, move, build, or wait to see results. You're used to filtering your imagination, censoring your desires, dimming your vision so it fits within the bounds of physical time and space. But here, there are no such limits. You don't have to try to manifest anything. Your energy speaks louder than words ever could. You think a flower, it blossoms. You long for water, a stream appears. You seek understanding. The experience arises around you, unfolding like a living lesson. This is not magic. It's not wishful thinking. It is the natural law of this dimension, where vibration is form, and intention is architecture. You quickly begin to see that thoughts are not private, not hidden, not dormant. They are radiant signals. They carry shape, color, sound, and feeling. And you're not just observing them, you're walking inside them. You may find yourself in a familiar garden, only to realize that it wasn't created by some cosmic decorator, it was born from your own subconscious longing. The roses bloom with memories you didn't even know you were still carrying. The breeze feels like the embrace of a moment you thought you had forgotten, and the entire landscape subtly shifts with your emotion. Joy brightens it, sorrow softens it, curiosity transforms it. Nothing is static, everything responds. But this responsiveness is a double-edged gift, because just as beauty can bloom from your imagination, so too can fear. If you carry unresolved terror, guilt, or confusion, those energies may briefly shape your surroundings. You might create a dense fog, a shadowed corridor, a looping scene from your past. Not as punishment, but as a mirror, a chance to see what's still vibrating within you. Here, every belief becomes a visible pattern. Every emotion becomes a climate, every thought becomes form. This is why mastering your mind becomes your next spiritual task. Not through control or suppression, but through awareness. You begin to watch your thoughts like an artist studies their canvas. You start to recognize patterns. You notice how quickly your inner world colors your outer experience. If you slip into sadness, the sky dims. If you open your heart, light floods in. If you remember a past hurt and cling to it, the memory materializes, not just as a thought, but as an immersive reality. You can walk through it, feel it, interact with it, and then, if you're ready, release it. You are shown, through direct experience, that nothing is hidden in this realm. There's no place to store the parts of yourself you ignored. They come forward, not to shame you, but to be transformed. And the realm supports you in this. Guides appear, not always in form, but as vibrational presences, to help you recalibrate. They don't dictate or direct, they nudge, suggest, illuminate. They help you see where your mind is still tangled in illusions and how to unweave those knots gently, with compassion. Many souls begin to experiment here. They create temples of light, meadows that sing, oceans with colors unknown to the earth. Some explore with the curiosity of a child. Others recreate places they loved, just to sit inside the feeling of home again. Artists create worlds more vivid than dreams. Musicians compose melodies made of pure energy. The only limits are the ones you bring with you. And even those can be dissolved, as you learn to move from unconscious creation to conscious expression. There's something sacred in this unfolding. You begin to understand that creation isn't just about producing beauty, it's about revealing truth. What you create reflects where you are in your evolution. A soul filled with peace creates peace. A soul still carrying fear might craft fragmented scenes, but even those serve as healing grounds, because nothing you create is permanent unless you hold on to it. You can let go of a scene, a structure, a symbol, and it fades like mist in sunlight. You are never stuck. You are always free to create anew. This realization changes everything. You begin to take responsibility, not in a burdensome way, but in an empowered one. You realize that creation is not separate from you, it is you. You are the artist and the brush and the canvas, and what you bring forth is a direct expression of your inner being. You stop trying to manipulate the outer world and start tending to the inner one. Because you see the reflection instantly. You think peace, and peace emerges. You think fear, and the shadows return. And in that delicate dance, you learn how to think with love. Some souls linger here for what feels like ages, building realities, exploring variations of beauty, studying the intricacies of thought creation. Others feel the call to move beyond even this, to explore realms where thought itself dissolves into pure being. But before that step can be taken, mastery of this creative realm must occur. Not perfection, but alignment. Not control, but awareness. You begin to trust yourself here. To trust your thoughts. To trust your own energy. And with that trust comes deeper freedom. You realize that this realm is not a test, but a playground of remembrance. A place where your soul rediscovers its natural power. A power not rooted in domination, but in expression. Not in control, but in resonance. This is the ultimate mirror. Here, your reality doesn't lie to you. It doesn't wait for months or years to show you the consequences of your thinking. It shows you now, instantly, mercifully, beautifully. And in that reflection, you find clarity. You see which beliefs still bind you, which fears still echo, which dreams still long to be realized. And perhaps most importantly, you see that your mind, once a source of confusion and worry, is actually the most sacred tool you've ever been given. Not because it lets you think, but because it lets you create. And in this space, thought isn't just fleeting noise, it is structure, song, scent, color, sound, and life. So the question becomes, what will you create when you know that every thought carries power? What kind of world will you shape when you remember that you are not a victim of reality, but its author? What happens when you finally trust the quiet, knowing within you that you were born to imagine, and through imagination, to remember who and what you truly are? Because in this realm, there is no veil, no delay, no permission needed, just thought, just intention, just you. And in every moment, the invitation is the same. Create something true, something beautiful, something that reflects the light of your eternal being. What if I told you that after you die, you don't stand trial? You sit with yourself? There's no gavel, no judgment seat, no line of saints or cosmic enforcers weighing your soul against impossible standards. Instead, something far more profound happens, something intimate, immersive, and deeply personal. You don't get sentenced, you get shown. And what you're shown is not a list of sins or moral checkboxes, it's a living, breathing replay of your life, but from the inside out. It begins quietly. You don't even realize it's happening at first. You're simply aware of yourself, your consciousness expanding beyond linear time. Then, slowly, you start to feel moments. Not remember them, feel them. You're walking through a conversation you had 10 years ago, but you're not just seeing it from your eyes. You're feeling it from the perspective of the other person. Every word you spoke is alive again. Every emotion it triggered in someone else ripples through you with exquisite clarity, not to punish you, but to show you the fullness of your impact. This is the life review, but it isn't judgment, it's empathy, it's reflection. It's the universe saying, now, see what you created. You feel the joy you gave others, as if it's your own. You feel the tears you caused, even unintentionally, not to be scolded, but to understand. You feel what it was like to be your child when you ignored them, your friend when you lifted them, the stranger whose life you touched in passing and never thought of again. It's all there, not as a slideshow or a memory reel, but as a multi-dimensional immersion. You're not observing, you're reliving it, but with the added dimension of knowing what it felt like for everyone your energy ever touched. This may sound overwhelming, and in some ways, it is, but it's not cruel. It's not a cosmic guilt trip. There is no booming voice saying, look what you did. There is only awareness, a loving, neutral mirror held up by your higher self and your spiritual guides. The purpose isn't to make you feel bad, it's to make you see clearly. You see not just what you did, but what you could have done, the words you didn't say, the love you withheld, the help you offered when no one else did, the kindness you gave even when no one was watching. In this space, ego is absent. There is no posturing, no defending, no spinning the story in your favor. You can't lie here, not because someone's forcing you to tell the truth, but because truth becomes impossible to ignore. It's radiant. It's all around you. And with that truth comes understanding, sometimes painful, sometimes blissful, but always freeing. There are moments during the review that will lift you. Moments you thought were insignificant but turn out to have mattered deeply to someone else. A smile you gave on someone's worst day. A message you wrote and forgot about that became someone's reason to keep going. These ripple effects are not minor, they're massive, and seeing them, feeling them, fills you with a kind of awe that no spiritual book or religious sermon could ever prepare you for. But there are also moments that may bring you to tears, not because anyone is condemning you, but because you finally understand what your actions really meant. You feel the pain in the silence after a harsh word, the isolation in someone you ignored, the regret in choices made from fear. And still, no one is judging you. In fact, you're being held through all of it, by guides, by your soul family, by your higher self. They don't recoil from your shadow, they embrace you through it. What's even more powerful is that this review is not linear. You don't go from birth to death, point by point. It unfolds like a spiral, drawing connections you never saw before. That moment when you were 7 and decided to shut down emotionally, that breakup in your 20s that taught you to build walls, that apology you never made in your 40s, all of it is woven together. You see how each choice led to the next, how each moment was both an outcome and a doorway. You also begin to see patterns, not just of your actions, but of your beliefs. You see how your assumptions shaped your experience, how your self-worth affected every relationship, how your fears limited your love. The review isn't just about what you did, it's about what you believed and how those beliefs manifested in your life. You're given the opportunity to see the programs running in the background, and with that, the power to change them. And then there's the most surprising revelation of all. You're not alone in this review. Others appear, not in physical form, but as energetic presences. People you wronged, people who hurt you, people who misunderstood you. Some come forward to forgive you, not in a ceremonial way, but energetically, soul to soul. Others ask for your forgiveness. The pain that once lingered between you is seen, felt, and then transmuted. The life review becomes a space not just of reflection, but of healing. A reunion of fractured energies, a restoration of balance. You begin to understand that there is no scorecard in the way you once imagined, no cosmic ledger tallying your failures and successes. There is only consciousness learning about itself. You see what expanded you, what contracted you, what made your light shine brighter, and what dimmed it. And you realize, with stunning clarity, that every experience had value, even the ones you once wished had never happened. They weren't mistakes, they were catalysts. By the time the review is complete, something deep inside you softens. Not because you feel good enough now, but because you've been seen, fully, because you've seen yourself, not the version you tried to be, but the totality. And in that seeing, you reclaim your power. You realize you were never here to be perfect. You were here to remember, through every stumble, every triumph, every choice, and you'll carry this knowing forward, into the next realm, into the next life, into the next expression of your soul, because once you've seen yourself through this mirror, through the eyes of love, through the hearts you've touched, you can never go back to who you were before. You are not judged, you are witnessed, you are not condemned, you are revealed, and in that revelation, you are offered the greatest gift of all, the chance to evolve, to love more deeply, to live more intentionally, to become the version of you that was always waiting behind the veil. The life review doesn't end you, it expands you. It reminds you that your existence was never small, never insignificant. It was a symphony of choices, rippling across space and time, and now, you're finally hearing the music you've been creating all along. What if I told you that after death, there is no final destination? There is only the next question, and the answer is yours to give. There comes a moment after the life review, after the immersion in thought-made reality, after the reunion with your soul family and the dissolving of earthly identity, when a sacred stillness opens up. It's not silence in the way you've known it, but an energetic pause, a breathless space where your soul gathers itself. In this space, nothing is pushed upon you. There are no angels pointing you toward a fixed path, no commandments etched in stone, no system demanding your return or promising salvation. Instead, there is only one truth ringing through the vastness of your being. What you do next is your choice. This moment is unlike any other. It's not clouded by confusion or fear. You're not the same person who arrived trembling, clinging to old beliefs or identities. You're aware now, deeply aware. You've remembered more of your eternal self. You've witnessed the echoes of your actions, felt the truth of your interconnectedness, stood in the light of your own soul without judgment. And from that place of clarity, the question arises, not from outside of you, but from within. Do you want to return? Do you want to rest? Do you want to explore beyond this cycle altogether? For some, the choice to return to Earth comes swiftly. Not because they failed, but because they see new possibilities. Loose threads they want to weave into resolution. Souls they long to reunite with in a new configuration. Dreams they still wish to manifest through flesh. These souls return not out of karma as punishment, but karma as momentum. They are drawn back by love, curiosity, or a sense of purpose still unfolding. They may choose to come back quickly, or after a long rest, waiting for the right alignment of energies, the perfect intersection of soul families, timing, and planetary need. When a soul chooses to reincarnate, they do so with full knowledge of what that means. They know they will forget, again. They know they will enter density, emotion, duality, but they also know they'll be supported. That signs will be given, that guides will whisper from the edges of their consciousness. And more importantly, they carry with them the subtle vibration of everything they've remembered so far. It will filter into their new life as intuition, as uncanny wisdom, as dreams that feel like ancient truths. Others feel a different call. They do not wish to return to the physical plane, not because of fear, but because they've completed a cycle. The lessons of Earth have crystallized. The density has been mastered. And now, something vast begins to shimmer in their awareness. The higher realms. These are dimensions not bound by time or gravity or memory. Realms of frequency where creation is instantaneous and beings communicate not with words, but through direct exchange of vibration, intention, and light. In these higher realms, souls don't live in houses or cities, but in states of being. They dwell in learning temples made of color and resonance. They move through fields of collective consciousness, merging with others for periods of co-creation, and then unfolding again as individuals. Some souls choose to serve here as teachers, overseeing the growth of those in transition, helping to stabilize planetary grids, guiding incarnated souls from behind the veil. Others explore the galactic libraries of experience, entire worlds of knowledge accessible through vibration alone. Some souls venture even further, into what could only be called the unknown, beyond reincarnation, beyond higher planes, into expressions of existence that have no human metaphor. These are souls drawn to the frontier of consciousness itself, realms where identity dissolves into pure awareness, where the concept of self and other becomes obsolete. They do not reject form, they transcend the need for it. And what they encounter there cannot be described, only become. Few reach this stage, but all carry the seed of it within. But here's the beauty: there is no hierarchy, no path is better, no realm is more noble. The soul does not evolve through competition or status, it evolves through authenticity, through alignment, through the sincere answering of the question, what do I truly desire next? And no matter what you choose, you are never alone in the decision. You consult with your soul group, with your guides, with the larger aspects of yourself. You feel into the timelines that would emerge from each path. You glimpse potential lifetimes, not in detail, but in frequency. A life as a healer in ancient lands. A life as a child who brings peace through art. A life of quiet solitude, where inner mastery becomes the offering. Or no life at all, just service from the other side, holding space for those still walking the earth. Some souls choose to become guides, not because they are superior, but because they remember what it's like to forget. They remember the aching loneliness, the questioning, the veiled beauty of being human. And so they choose to whisper back to those who are still in the fog, not to interfere, but to gently nudge. They become the quiet presence in a hospital room, the comforting voice in a dream, the surge of strength that arrives just when someone thinks they can't go on. They become the signs, the synchronicities, the warmth in the silence. These guides are not chosen. They volunteer. Others choose to rest, truly rest, to float in silence, to absorb the love of the source without effort or intention, not as retreat, but as return. They let go of all structure, all desire, all motion. They are simply held. Some remain here for eons, some for moments, but all are nourished by it. What's important to understand is that this moment of choice is not a gate you must pass through. It's not a test, it's an opening. A sacred pause, where your soul gets to feel itself fully, without noise, without pressure, without illusion. It's the first time, in a very long time, that you realize you are not bound. You never were, and whatever you choose, it is honored. There is no shame in returning, no shame in remaining, no shame in resting, no shame in leaping into the great cosmic mystery. You are met with love in every direction, in every form, and even after you choose, you are free to choose again. Because freedom is the currency of the soul, and choice is its sacred language. So when the question arises, what now? Know that it is not asked with urgency, but with reverence. You are not expected to know right away. You can linger in the light, walk through your creations, visit the ones you love, reflect as long as you need. Time does not bind you here, and when the answer comes, it will come from the deepest part of your being. Not from fear, not from duty, but from resonance. Maybe you'll return, maybe you'll rise, maybe you'll dissolve into something vaster than anything this universe has yet known. But whatever you choose, it will be yours, fully, freely, consciously. Because at last, you will remember. The journey was never about reaching a finish line. It was about realizing you've always had the pen in your hand, and now, the page is blank.